Welcome everybody to another edition of the GioMoShow on 88.3 FM WXOU, Auburn Hills, Michigan, Oakland University, and all your wonderful station identification features. I'm your host, Giovanni Mosheri, your sports media director here at WXOU, and the GioMoShow is your home for all Oakland University sports and beyond on 88.3 FM. Don't forget to follow WXOU on our MAB award-winning social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter. And don't forget to follow me, Giovanni Mosheri, your host, as well on all of those platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and Twitter. And if you missed a live show, if you're not currently with me listening to 88.3 FM, then you can find the show at your own convenience on Spotify and YouTube. So there's no way to miss the GioMoShow. And I got some news for you guys. It could either be good or bad, but this will be the final GioMoShow episode of the summer of 2023. We're going to be taking a break after this show, and we'll be picking it back up once the school year begins. And what do I have left for you guys on this grand summer finale? I got none other than the crown jewel of Oakland University sports. I got a 2022-2023 season review of men's basketball. It's the big ticket across campus. It's the things that if you don't go to Oakland, you still know about Oakland, that basketball is the main thing. That was my impression when I was coming to Oakland University, and the biggest advice I got from alumni Grizzlies was to go to these basketball games. And then when I finally came on campus in my sophomore year, I went to two, and I didn't really listen to them very well. Still enjoyed them, but I knew that coming into my now junior year that I would have to go to more. And what a way to overcompensate for that than to become the sports media director and to call the games, etc., etc. So I've been getting my fix of Oakland sports, especially men's basketball, as I hope all of you are as well. So we're going to be going through the entire 2022-2023 season in the way we have been all summer. We're going to read through the scores, we'll give you the stats and highlights, and we'll give you the final result of the season. In addition to that, we're going to be covering, of course, the USPBL, their last week of play, not of the season, but this past week of play. Giving you also the scores, highlights, stats, etc. for the USPBL from the biggest Diamond Hoppers fan you will ever know. I dare you to challenge that otherwise. But before we get into all of that, we got to talk about Bart's Pizza, baby. Bart Basilico reinvented his father's pizzeria business by putting it on wheels. I'm talking a pizza food truck, baby. Bart and his wife Lauren travel all around Metro Detroit, cooking up homemade pies made fresh to order in their 4-layered pizza oven on wheels. You can find them on their website at eatbartspizza.com and on Facebook and Instagram at Bart's Pizza. His last name is literally Basil, so you know that he knows what he's doing. And make sure to grab a cannoli as well while you are there. Bart's Pizza, it is too good. So finally diving into the men's basketball season to give you the headliner stats of the season. The Golden Grizzlies went 13-19 overall for the season for a 40.6 win percentage. But in the Horizon League, there were 11-9, 55% of their wins of the Horizon League. 8-6 at home, 5-10 away, and 0-3 in neutral. So let's give you all the games that you've been looking for. Starting with the exhibition. Not usually something that we consider when talking about any kind of sports season. You don't count the NFL preseason in records, but I like going over them, especially because I was at both games. This is before the WXOU decided to be calling these games, or before we started calling these games. We already made the decision before. But October 20th is when the season began in the arena. It was against Grand Valley State University. We got a chance to see all of the new faces of the Golden Grizzlies for this, I guess now past season. And it was a star-studded win, 92-76 to fire up the arena for the beginning of the season. Jalen Moore starting the season with, I believe, 32 points. 37 points against the Lakers. So they followed that up with a road trip, which, debatably a road trip. Rochester University is just down the street here. They faced the Warriors in their house in what is essentially a giant high school gym, I will be honest. I went there, obviously, because it was so close. I got some buddies that go to or used to go to Rochester University. We were one of 5 Golden Grizzly fans in the entire stadium, or in the entire arena, gym, whatever. And I'll tell you what, that crowd was so loud, and you can imagine, like, you don't have the like echo-proof ceilings or anything in that place. It's all hard surfaces, so whatever noise that you're hearing from the student section is reverberated like 7 times. That place was rocking, and it was a very close game. Part of that was because the day before they were supposed to play, so this is November 1st, this is a Tuesday, the day before, that Monday night, Jalen Moore during practice suffered what turned to be pretty major ankle injury. So without any prep, the Golden Grizzlies had to go into Rochester with, trying to improvise without the point guard of Oakland University basketball. And it ended up coming down to the wire where the Golden Grizzlies came out on top with last-second points, 66-64, to beat Rochester and to close out the exhibition part of the season. To start the regular season, and what you could also count this as an exhibition game given the competition, but Defiance College came into the arena for what was WXOU's first basketball broadcast. It was me and Ben Schrader on the call, and it was a rough broadcast, obviously being the first basketball one, but it was a lot of fun to call, and it started a great season, at least for WXOU. And for the score of the game, now you gotta understand, Defiance College is not in Division I. They are not. I would wager to say off of memory that they were Division III, but I cannot confirm nor deny. Either way, the final score was Golden Grizzlies 92, Hornets 27. With that single game under their belt, the Grizzlies became one of the top defensive teams in the country just by holding a team to 27 points. Excuse me. So they then follow that up with how many home games? They got 2 more home games against teams with the color orange. They followed that up with an arena game against Bowling Green. The Falcons came to town in a game that was close, but no cigar for the Grizzlies, 82-87 in a loss to the Falcons. They followed that up with a big game against Oklahoma State, where they came this time to the arena. And if you guys are familiar with Detroit Pistons basketball, then you know somebody that went to Oklahoma State, who was one of the top players in that draft from Oklahoma State. Number 1 overall pick, Cade Cunningham, is an alumni of OSU. And he stopped by the arena for what was, he became hard to find because he was basically disguising himself, which if you're this famous around this town, then you gotta, it's understandable to kind of, cover up a little bit, glasses, jacket. People still found him. People still got pictures. But unfortunately, it was not enough hype, not enough energy to win the game as the Grizzlies fall to whatever the mascot is, I can't remember, 62-91. So in the first 3 games of the season, Golden Grizzlies are 1-2. Moving on to an away game to Toledo to face the Rockets in what was who were one of the top shooting schools in the country at the time, or at least it seemed like it, against the Golden Grizzlies. They were not able to defeat the Rockets and therefore lost 90-112. Remember, college basketball is only 40 minutes and 2 halves. It's not the 48 and 3 and 4 quarters like the NBA. So to get 100 is a stinger. Although I believe Trey Townsend got 6 of 7 from 3 in that game. So it must be something about Toledo's arena, but it's a tough loss for the Grizzlies, but they followed that up with an absolute thriller against a MAC opponent. Eastern Michigan was next. Now we're at November 19th. This is a Saturday afternoon, where they faced Imani Bates and the Eastern Michigan Eagles in another big star game in the arena. And this one went all the way to overtime. And what was a very, very exciting game. All the energy, the booing of Imani Bates, the also oohs and ahs from his unbelievable range, made for an exciting game. And with 2 crucial blocks, I'm going off of memory here, we got 2 insane blocks on Imani Bates by Trey Townsend in the same spot. It was a little bit to the right of the basket facing the student section, because this was in the second half facing the student section. 2 huge blocks that just lit up the crowd in the final minute of the game. It was enough to give the Golden Grizzlies the win against the Eagles, 92-90 in overtime. And then with that, November 19th, we get a long break from basketball in the arena as the Grizzlies did not come back until December 29th. And in that long away stretch, Golden Grizzlies made a trip to the Bahamas to compete in the 2022 Nassau Championship. They faced 3 teams in their time in Nassau. They faced Long Beach State, San Jose State, and Missouri States. A lot of states came to the Bahamas, I guess. And unfortunately, the Grizzlies left without a win in what was a trying time for the Grizzlies at this point, losing 3 straight to now be 2-6. Coming back to America, they did not follow up with the fire that they needed to, and unfortunately, after that 3-game losing streak in the Bahamas, it extended 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games more. Unfortunately, the Golden Grizzlies went on an 8-game skid, starting with 2 Horizon League opponents at the start of December. They went to Cleveland State on December 1st and had an unbelievable lack of energy. And I got to be honest here, and this was something that was reiterated by Coach Campy, by the surrounding media, that being, including WXOU, but you could just tell by watching the game that there was just no energy. For some reason, whether it was that bad taste in their mouth, those bad 3 games turning into 4, the Golden Grizzlies just did not have the fire to play against one of the best teams in the Horizon League in Cleveland State. So they walked away with a loss 64-80 against the Vikings. And they followed that up with a game against Purdue Fort Wayne. This one was going to be on ESPNU, televised nationally. This was big, and the Golden Grizzlies were going to have to shake off those 4 losses in a hurry if they wanted to make a good showing on national TV against the Mastodons. And even though they lost, they definitely brought the fire back. They definitely did not repeat the energy that they had against Cleveland State, rather taking the Mastodons to overtime in what was an unfortunate loss, 73-79. But if you count moral victories, you can count that as a moral victory, although I'm sure many of the players and coaching staff would advise against counting such moral victories. But you can tell that they had some life. So with that, Golden Grizzlies are now 2-8 and now 0-2 in the Horizon League. Then they make a big trip to Syracuse to face who was at the time the longest reigning NCAA basketball coach in Jim Boeheim. They faced Syracuse and were kind of shot out the building there. 66-95 was the final score, and a similar story against Boise State. 57-77 was the final score, and then in the annual game against Michigan State, this time being played at the Breslin Center. It was a game that WXOU, we all traveled to. It was the first away game, and it was very exciting to see the Breslin Center. I've never been there before, and to see kind of like the grand stage of Big Ten basketball. It was a ton of fun to watch. Golden Grizzlies, they had them in the first half. They were so close. They were, I'll be honest, they were blessed with a lot of missed shots and poor shooting by the Spartans, but they had it. They had a defense down. They had the momentum on their side. But from watching them this season, you kind of had a feeling that the second half was going to be a different story, and you saw that kind of throughout the season. And it's not like the Grizzlies are unique in this, but this is definitely a trait that they had throughout the season. So they had I don't have the score throughout the game, but after that good showing, and after I posted about watch out for the Grizzlies in the Breslin Center on the WXOU's Instagram page, after I posted that at halftime, those shots started falling, and Oakland was run out of the building with a final score of 54-67 against the Spartans. And at this point, things are looking very, very dire. 2-11 is the regular season record for the Golden Grizzlies, and unfortunately, it seemed a lot of Grizzly fans seem to have tuned out at this point. not impressed with the 2-11 record, and decided to look elsewhere for their Thursdays and Saturdays. For those games, which are usually the days that games are played in the arena, if you weren't familiar. But a lot of this did have to do with that ankle injury that Jalen Moore suffered before the Rochester game, all the way back in beginning of November 1st. That injury was something that, and what proved to be a poor decision, respectfully a poor decision. Jalen Moore fought through the injury, kept playing, but it just kept getting worse and worse. His, Coach Campy said his ankle looked like a bowling ball. Like it was a rough scene for Jalen Moore's ankle, and it's very important for Moore's game to be explosive and to be fast and to have that agility, not only handling the ball so much, but his lightning ability, his acceleration to get to the basket was his trademark for his entire career at JUCO and then at Oakland University for his 3 years here. So to be robbed of that mobility was something that they just had to fix. They played without Jalen Moore against Michigan State in response to this, and they just shut it down. Doctor's orders were about 3 weeks off the ankle. Just got to let it get better for Horizon League play. And that is what ended up happening. Because when the Grizzlies finally returned to the arena during the holiday break, December 29th against Milwaukee. Milwaukee at the time was towards the top of the Horizon League, even though it was just a few games into the league season. But this was a game where the Grizzlies started to turn it around. But it was not Jalen Moore that was the star player of this game, not the headliner. Rather, it was the junior Blake Lampman, who got his groove on from three in that game. 5 of 7 from three with a career high 20 points scored against the Panthers, and it was just all Oakland in that game. Also called on WXOU, me and Ben Schrader on the call for that one. Grizzlies win and snap the losing streak 83-61 against the Panthers in the arena, in what was a understandably empty arena, but still. They followed that up 2 days later, New Year's Eve, against Green Bay at home. They got the Wisconsinites coming to the arena, both Milwaukee and Green Bay. And this time it was Chris Conway's turn as he showed out with a 14-9-2 game and was 7 of 8 from the field. It was a great showing for Chris Conway and is going to be, in this coming season, a very critical part of what the Grizzlies are trying to do, being that now coming into his junior year, he's a little more veteran on the team. He's one of the tallest that we got on the team and was the biggest guy that we had last year. So to see him break out of that game, there was a lot of hope and optimism that was, it wasn't wrong, but it definitely gave you a huge boost of confidence for the fans and for Conway to have such a breakout game, because 14-9-2, not the biggest stat, but if you watch that game that he was eating, it was a great game to watch. So then they follow that up. So now they're on a 2-game winning streak in the Horizon League. Now we get to the new year, January 6th. This is a Friday at Northern Kentucky. This game was wild. It was a very close game. And the big highlight, the big story of this game was with a minute 35 left. Score was 62-55, Northern Kentucky lead. Grizzlies were down by 7. But to finish that game, Oakland finished with a 9-1 run to win the game 64-63, win by 1 point. All 9 of those points for the Grizzlies in that 9-1 run were scored by Jalen Moore. Many of them free throws, but that's part of what he does. He draws fouls, and he is accurate once he is shooting from the stripe. And that's exactly what happened in this game. Kept the streak alive in the Horizon League and started to push away from that nasty losing streak that they had earlier in non-conference play. So they win the game 64-63, and then follow that up with another tight game at Wright State, January 8th. This is a Sunday afternoon. And in the final play of the game, the Grizzlies were able to win it. Rocket Watts, at this point of the season, has been on and off. Has been was the star story for the Grizzlies coming into the season, but was taking some time to find his groove in Campy's offense, in the system. He is one of Oakland's best defenders, but was still looking for that moment, for that game to get him into the groove of things as a Golden Grizzly, and he finally got there with a game-winning 3 with mere seconds left in the game. It was Jalen Moore rushing to the basket on the right side, and as the entire Wright State defense collapsed, kicks it out to Rocket Watts for the game-winning 3. Grizzlies win 75-73 and advance to a 4-game winning streak. They are now 6-11. They then return home to face Robert Morris in a game that was defined by Trey Townsend. Grizzlies won it 69-65, and 30 of those points were scored by Trey Townsend. At this point in the season, it was his third 30-point game recorded, and he had a 29-point game recorded outside of that. So, Trey Townsend was really leaving his mark on this game here, and it was aided by Robert Morris's star player. I forgot his name, but we'll say Robert Morris, Khalil Spear. There we go, found it. Robert Morris's star player Khalil Spear was getting into foul trouble towards the second half of the game. With 4 fouls, the Grizzlies decided to attack the post, to attack underneath the basket with Trey Townsend, and it seemed to have worked because Robert Morris, they couldn't sacrifice losing Spear in that game, and it proved to be what the Grizzlies needed. Trey Townsend scoring 30, and 21 of which were just in the second half, by the way. So it was just remarkable to see. I was lucky enough to do sideline reporting for the ESPN cast for this game, so I got a very happy Campy once the post-game interview was conducted. I got an interview with Trey Townsend as well to talk about that wonderful game, and that was just a great experience because if you know Campy, then you see him on the sideline. You see him on the sideline. He gets fired up. His hair goes from a nice, slick, we'll say product hair to all kinds of razzle-frazzle at the end of the game. So it was, for my first sideline reporting, it was a lot of fun to get a happy camper. Campy. Get it? So the Grizzlies now are on a 5-game winning streak and are 7-11 and are starting to dig themselves out of that non-conference stumble, we'll say. Grizzlies are now 5-2 in the Horizon League, also to mention. So they followed that up, so that was the Thursday game. The Saturday game was against Youngstown State. The Penguins, who had a loaded veteran roster on their team, kind of served it up to the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies lost to the Penguins 69-85, and in what was a multi-headed monster of an offense for Youngstown State, proved to be worth their salt in the arena. And that was another game that I did silent reporting for, and I did not get a happy Campy for that one, but he was nice enough to not take it out on me in front of the camera, I guess. But he sure wasn't happy about it, and I wouldn't be either. Following up a 5-game winning streak with that kind of performance is going to be frustrating. So 7-12 is now their record, and 5-3 in the Horizon League. We move now to January 19th. This is an away game against IUPUI in the Jungle, is what IUPUI calls their basketball stadium. Jaguars, Jungle, you get it. In this game, this one was a thriller. This one went into overtime as well, and it went into overtime thanks to Jalen Moore taking a 3-point shot in what was it was a play that was designed for, I believe, Blake Landman, but it was falling apart, and they had to do something. The clock was ticking with less than 10 seconds left in this possession. The ball ended up in Jalen Moore's hands, and in what was a crowd of players, both Grizzlies and Jaguars. Jalen Moore rises up from 30 feet, gets the 3-pointer, ties the game, and gives the Grizzlies a chance to win it in overtime, which they did, beating the Jaguars 83-77 in overtime, and are now 6-3 in the Horizon League and advanced to 8-12. They followed that up with a trip to our neighbors, the Titans, in Callahan Hall. Golden Grizzlies were there. in the rivalry game and another edition of the Metro Series in what was a fantastic game. This one was also called in WXOU on the road. I believe it was Harge and Gavin that went to Callahan Hall for that one. I can't remember. I wasn't there. But in Callahan Hall, Jalen Moore showed off with a 32-point game, 32, 5, and 7, 8 of 16 from the field, and 14 of 16 from the stripe. Remember when I said that that's part of his skill set? I'm not kidding. He gets double-digit free throws out of double-digit free throws, all the time. That's his calling card. And some may say it's cheap, but if it ends in points, if it ends in wins, why wouldn't you go for that? That's my opinion, and it might be biased, but so be it. So they beat the Titans in a Metro Series game, 76-67 in a mirror score, 76-67 to advance to 9-12 and overall, and 7-3 in the Horizon League. And the Horizon League is getting pretty crowded at this point. So they follow that up with a road trip to Youngstown State to face the Penguins for the second time this season. Each team in the Horizon League does face each other twice, once at home, once away. And this one was a lot closer, but I'll tell you what, Youngstown State's crowd was on fire, and you can infer that was because this game was on ESPN 2, not U2. So this was a big deal. This was a big televised game for D1 basketball, and for Oakland University to be on that spotlight. They gave it to them, but it was not enough. 73-77 was the final score. Oakland loses now twice to Youngstown State, falling to 9-13 and then 7-4 in the Horizon League. They make their second trip to Robert Morris, or they played their second game against Robert Morris in their place. And remember when I mentioned in the first game that Trey Townsend had 30 or in part due to Khalil Spear being in foul trouble? It was not the same case in Moon Township, Pennsylvania, as Spear kind of went off, and he, if I remember correctly, I almost want to look this up. I want to see how many points he scored, because I remember the commentators of the game, because I was watching this on TV. They mentioned that Khalil Spear became either the all-time leading scorer at Robert Morris or something to do with that. It was a historic scoring game for Khalil Spear. And looking at the box score, he had 30, so it was definitely historic or not. It was a good game for him. He 30 points, 11 of 16 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3, which was just out of nowhere and not fair. In my opinion, that was just like what else can you do? He was also 5 of 5 from the free throw line, 11 rebounds, a block, an assist. Spear was getting his revenge against the Grizzlies in this one, and I remember it being a big topic of the commentators. So I at least wanted to mention that. So the Grizzlies fall to the Colonials 63-68 and are now 7-5 in the Horizon League, 9-14 overall. They then come back home to face Purdue Fort Wayne to get revenge over that overtime loss, or revenge for that overtime loss very early in the Horizon League season. But they were just not able to do it. Purdue Fort Wayne star player by the name of, let me look it up. It was Jared Godfrey. Had 32 points in this game, 8 of 14 from the field, 5 of 8 from 3, 11 of 13 from the stripe, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, a block, steal. He went off in this game, and Campy was not happy about the defense that they played against that star player. That was supposed to be their focus, but unfortunately it was just not meant to be. He was on fire. The Grizzlies defense was not enough to stop it, and they face a loss at home, 73-82 to the Mastodons. 9-15 overall, 7-6 in Horizon League. And if you remember earlier, after that 5-game winning streak in the Horizon League, the Grizzlies were, looking at it, they were 5-2 in the Horizon League, and then followed up with quite a few losses. It's unfortunate to see. It's a tough league, but after that game, so February 2nd was Purdue-Fort Wayne. February 4th was Cleveland State. The team that the very first Horizon League game Oakland had no energy with. It was not going to be the case in the second time that they face the Vikings. I was lucky enough to actually not be working the game, and it was in the stands for it. And I had just so much fun with being in the stands. You know, if you guys see me in the arena and you see videos or whatever, I go off. Okay, I make my presence known in the arena. I like to be part of the game, whether I'm playing or not. And this game was no different. I had the roster in my hand. I was calling their names. I got one of them to look at me. And if you're a heckling fan, getting the attention of the player that you're heckling there's nothing sweeter than it. Of course, I kept it professional. I kept it kind, and nothing that would cause any eyebrows to raise or have me get thrown out of the arena. That's not my style. But sure was a lot of fun, and this one was so much fun that it went into overtime. I'm trying to think of which to go to first. We'll talk about this. 3 Grizzlies in this game scored over 20 points. Jalen Moore, he had a game of 25 points along with 7 assists. Trey Townsend, 23 points and 17 rebounds. Blake Lampman, 22 points and was 5 of 9 from 3. And in that game, Oakland was able to come out on top. It was a nail-biter of a game. I couldn't talk after that game from the shouting and the cheering and all the strain that I put on my voice. But Oakland ends up winning it 92-89 in overtime in the arena to get the wins back to the Grizzlies. Now 10-15 and 8-6 overall in Horizon League respectively. That game was just a lot of fun. And we got a few games left of the Golden Grizzlies season. We're going to throw it to a quick commercial break here as we're at the halfway mark of the GioMoShow. Be sure to stay tuned for our USPBL update as we see how my Hoppers are doing and how the league is getting really close. So we'll be right back. We'll discuss all of the rest of the basketball season in USPBL on the GioMoShow right after this.
Yo, I'm Jake Masucci from Jake's Takes. I wanted to talk a little bit about my show on my guy Giovanni's own show. And I wanted to talk about a little bit about Jake's Takes. I'm a student manager at Oakland University, and I kind of just talk all things sports. I talk a lot about the NBA, talk a little college basketball. We did a lot of March Madness stuff recently. We talked about NBA playoffs, NFL playoffs, talked a lot about the NFL draft. It's basically just an all things sports show. I really think you guys would enjoy it. And shout out to my guy Giovanni. Love him. But please check out Jake's Takes. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and then it's also available on its own YouTube channel. So please check out Jake's Takes, but please continue enjoying Giovanni's show.
And we are back here on the GioMoShow, 88.3 FM, WXOU, Auburn Hills, Michigan, Oakland University. Station identification, yada yada. We're going to be continuing here with the rest of the men's basketball season for our season review of the GioMoShow. This is the last show of the summer. We're going to be picking it up once the school year begins. And to get back into the season, to recap what we've talked about so far, Grizzlies are now 10-15. 10-15 overall, and they are 8-6 in the Horizon League. And we are now in the month of February. Already played a couple games in February, and that brings us to the Wisconsin away trip. February 9th and 11th was the game against Green Bay and Milwaukee. In the game against Green Bay, it was a win. It was a win, 57-47, and if you kind of vomited in your mouth a little bit after hearing that score, then you would be correct. I was watching that game, and it was uncharacteristic of like both teams to play it was just sloppy for some reason, and it was shots were just not falling. The score was in single digits for the longest time in that game, and we were worried that it's just going to be like that for the rest of the game. Well, it picked up in the second half once things were cleaned up, but it was an ugly, ugly game against the Phoenix, but a win's a win, and you take that in the Horizon League. So Oakland wins it 59-47, are now 11-15 and 9-6 in the Horizon League. 9-6, right? I'm counting it in live time. Yep. So then the second game in the Wisconsin trip was February 11th against Milwaukee, a game that they beat pretty soundly over the holiday break for the, I guess you could say, start of the Horizon League play. I guess in the rest of the season. This game was close. Oakland was up by 10 in the Panthers' house, in the Panthers' den, whatever they like to call it. They were up by 10, and the Grizzlies were just on fire all game. But another theme for this season was a shallow bench. The starters for the Grizzlies were getting a lot of minutes and a lot of miles, and the farther you go in the season with that kind of rotation, it becomes very strenuous. You run the risk of some injury with the players, and that's kind of what was going on for this game. It's not an excuse. Okay, we had a 10-point lead. Okay, we could have won it, but Rocket Watts was not playing, or at least very, very limited minutes, due to illness, and with a shallow bench, you lose another guy, and it just makes it that much more shallow and that much more miles on the starters' legs. And as the game was going on, you could just see that Milwaukee had more gas in the tank than the Golden Grizzlies. The game even went into overtime, so then you got the starters playing even more minutes in that game. And unfortunately, it was not enough gas in the tank for the Grizzlies to prevent the comeback, and Milwaukee gets them 80-77, or 77-80. Grizzlies loss is the way I've been saying it. So that one was really rough, but it shows not only the bench situation, but it shows the value of Rocket Watts in this team. So the Grizzlies fall to 11-16 and 9-7 in the Horizon League. They then return back home to a game against IUPUI. Golden Grizzlies win this one 85-81 in the arena. The Jaguars, while they were near the bottom of the Horizon League for the entire season, you saw it when we went to their place that they were gonna bite somebody. That was the discourse going on before the before the away game, or the words I'm looking for. So before the away game, Coach Campbell was staying cautious not to fall asleep at the wheel against IUPUI, as they're gonna get somebody, and it just can't be them. I remember him saying that. So this game, not a big problem. Not a lot of defense either. 85-81 was the win for IUPUI, or against IUPUI. Golden Grizzlies win. They're now 12-16 and 10-7 in the Horizon League. Finally getting to double digits. And then February 17th, the big game in the arena was against the Titans, as they came all the way from Detroit to play us in a game. How do I put this? Coming into this game, the Grizzlies have won 11 of the past 12 matchups against Detroit. It was, the Grizzlies have just owned them in Horizon League play for so many years. But the key for this one was the absence, once again, of Rocket Watts. I mentioned that he was one of the star defenders on the team. And it's true. As in the game they played against Detroit earlier in the season in Callahan Hall, forgive me, let me pull up the stats for it. Is it important for my point? Antoine Davis, who is the barely, second leading scorer in NCAA history. No caveat. He has scored the second most points in college basketball history. And there was a path for him to surpass Pistol Pete Maravich for his record of the most points in NCAA history. People were talking about how Antoine Davis, he did it in 5 seasons. It doesn't count. It shouldn't be celebrated. Pete Maravich did it in 3 and without a 3-point line and this, and that. But my perspective on it then and now is, if you are so close to the record, why wouldn't you go for it? Why wouldn't you be excited to see somebody take such a long-standing record and make it his? Even if it does take 5 years. That means you got to be one of the best scorers in the entire country for 5 years in order to get that. That's an accomplishment even of itself. Because if you're going for something like that, you don't have a lot of room, even in 5 years, to slack and to have a stretch of games in single-digit scoring. You don't have room for that. There's not enough college eligibility to make that happen. So that's Antoine Davis. That's Detroit Mercy. In the first game that Oakland played in Callahan Hall, Rocket Watts was there, playing his butt off on defense. They held him to 14 points, 3 of 16 from the field. He made all 6 of his free throws to help the scoring, and was also 2 of 9 from 3. So that defense, it's not all on Rocket. We'll say that it's not all on Rocket, but man, that shows. That's big time. So now when they play them in the arena without Rocket Watts, Davis scores 30 in what was a disappointing rivalry night for the Grizzlies. 74-96 was the final score. It was just bad. And I was in the front row for that one. They gave me a flag. I didn't know they gave students flags, but I was floating around a little one. I was worried that Anthony Galena, the flag guy at Oakland games, I was worried that he was, I was kind of stepping on his toes a little bit, but we talked it out and he's cool with it. But that game, that was hard to get the crowd going for that one, for sure. So Grizzlies are now 12-17, and they are 10-8 in the Horizon League. So then after that game, they washed that bad taste out of their mouth against Wright State. Wright State, and I want to mention, has the second leading scorer in the Horizon League in Trey Calvin. Very similar player to Antoine Davis, but a little bit toned down a little bit. Still scored over 20 points a game, at least coming into this matchup against Oakland. But this game, Rocket Watts was able to return. He played. And this I really want to drive home Rocket Watts' value to the team. So against Detroit Mercy without him, Antoine scores 30. The next game with Rocket Watts, Trey Calvin scores 6. I think that says volumes about what Rocket adds to this team. And for those of you who weren't aware, he's returning next year. There was some question about it, but he is returning. So we get to see that again. And not only did we hold Trey Calvin to 6 points, but we out-rebounded Wright State, who was the best rebounding team in the league. We out-rebounded them, which you don't see that often at Oakland. We don't. That's not our calling card. Rebound is not our calling card, unfortunately. Next year, it's looking to improve with some more height in transfers and recruits. But Oakland out-rebounded the best rebounding team by 11 in that game. It was insane. And this is the second to last game in the Horizon League. Everything's on the line here. Basically, everything's on the line here. So they beat the Raiders 75-68, 13-17 overall, 11-8 in the Horizon League, and it builds up to what ended up not mattering in the rankings. Oakland stayed locked in at 5th place in the Horizon League as they played senior night, last game in the arena against Northern Kentucky. Senior night for Jalen Moore and for grad student transfer Keaton Hervey, who has been a solid, consistent player throughout the entire season. It was a great joy to talk to. I got to interview him for a little project. That dude is nice. A nice person to talk to. Anyway, so in a game that it was senior night, you want to see them with a win. It didn't matter in the rankings, and in a team that already has so many miles on the legs of their starters, you kind of understand them taking their foot off the gas a little bit. But Jalen Moore still got 27. So it's his last game in the arena. Of course he's going to. But unfortunately, they ended up losing to the Norse 69-78 to finish out the season 13-18 and 11-9 in Horizon League, locked in 5th place. And who was there to face them in the Horizon League tournament as the 4th seed? None other than Northern Kentucky. A very familiar foe. They played them a week before. They played in Northern Kentucky, though, and it was tough because Northern Kentucky had one of the best defenders in the league. I believe Chris Brandon of Northern Kentucky was the Defensive Player of the Year. So, they got a very, very good team in Northern Kentucky. They were able to beat the Grizzlies. They were able to keep them at about 4 to 5 points away, multiple possessions away for just about the entire game. 74-81 was the final score, and ends the season for the Golden Grizzlies. Unfortunate to see. You would want to see them make a bigger push in the Horizon League, but they faced who was eventually the champions of the Horizon League. So, if you're me, a fan, a student, I can roll with that. You lost to the champs. I mean, it's better than losing to the team that loses their next game. It's loser talk if you're a mean old sports guy like my pal Harsh Brutar. Love you, Harsh. But we all got different standards here. But overall, the Grizzlies finish a great season, 13-19 if you count the playoff loss, and 11-9 in Horizon League, and are building up for what is going to be a great next season. A lot of new faces on the Golden Grizzlies. A lot of big shoes to fill with Jordan or Jalen Moore going on to playing professionally overseas. Can't remember what team he's playing for, but he did get a professional contract. So congratulations to Jalen Moore for that. Definitely. We wish Keaton Hervey the best as well in his endeavors. He aspires to play professionally as well, wherever it may be. I'm not crying, I'm just sniffling. I don't know if you can hear that. So that is going to wrap up the Golden Grizzlies season review. Definitely the longest one I've done. We're at 6:48 and I got 12 minutes left to cover the USPBL. So we're going to take a very quick commercial break and we'll get right into the USPBL. We're going to have to hurry it up. Right here on the GioMoShow, 88.3 FM WXOU. And we have just reached 7 o'clock. We made it a full hour here on the GioMoShow for the last show until the semester begins. And I, for one, want to thank everybody as quickly as I can so I can get out of here on time. I want to thank everybody for following me all this summer. I poured a lot into this show. I put a lot of hours into making it what it is today, to making getting the YouTube channel up and running, keeping the Spotify open, doing my best on social media. I have loved every second working, updating you guys on Oakland sports and USPBL throughout the summer. We're not going to be stopping. We're just going to take a quick pause until September rolls around. But I want to thank you, everybody, for watching, for keeping up to date, and for all the kind words that you guys have for the show. This means a lot to me, and it makes me very happy that it makes you guys happy as well. So that's going to close out the GioMoShow for the month of August. We'll see you in September on 88.3 FM WXOU.